generation of a millennial child and a helicopter parent actually did not take place in a therapy room, but rather a boardroom. A young 20-some-odd-year-old woman had come in for an interview for an entry-level position I had posted and brought her mom along for the session. And during the session, the mom actually shut down the daughter, responded to questions for her, and actually stopped the interview altogether at one point and asked if I'd really reviewed the resume. Because if I had, I would have hired her sight unseen, of course, and then began listing her demands. Needless to say, the millennial generation has been labeled a lot of different things. Generation letter Y, Generation Y question mark, Generation Me, even Generation Screwed. And needless to say, they've had a lot to deal with. And love them or loathe them, this generation was created by us, and just like us, they have a need to be understood. Every generation happens across its own triumphs and struggles, and it toils a bit with the previous generation for the things that they've handed down, positively and not so positively. And every generation absolutely struggles to raise its children in a way that helps them feel safe, secure, and empowers them with the tools and the skills that they will need to meet the ever-increasing demands of our society. The way I hear some people talk about our millennial generation these days makes me think about times when I have worked with maybe grandparents or parents who've immigrated from other societies who have come to me and spoken about concerns for their younger generation. They speak to the fact that they're adapting more quickly to the mainstream culture, that they're living at different speeds of life, challenging tradition, and speaking new languages. And I think that it's very concerning that this is what's happening to us on a global scale, but we're not necessarily looking at it in the same ways. This is made evident by people such as Brené Brown speaking to the fact that we are the most addicted, overweight, and in-debt society in the history of our evolution. Martin Siegelman and his colleagues report a paradoxical rise in depression over the last 50 years, despite significant gains in income, education, longevity, and general ease of living. But what's interesting is, if you take a look at from the 1960s to the 1990s and beyond, that there's been a doubling, if not more, in rates of divorce, suicide, violent crimes. And as we know that depression is rarely just depression, and that the millennial generation is deemed those who were born between 1980 and 2000, they've definitely come into their own during this very tumultuous time. I work with millennials in a variety of different formats. As a therapist, I help them overcome addiction, trauma, and mental health issues. As a program director, I employ them. As a graduate and undergraduate level professor, I educate them. And as a Gen Xer myself, I'm a proud parent to 2 of them. So needless to say, I've had a front row seat to the beauty, brilliance, and struggles of this extremely diverse generation. And while my talk today could not possibly encompass all of the different situations faced by the millennial generation, my hope is to speak to some of the commonalities that are coming up for us, and to take a look at why we may be seeing an increase in the mental health of this generation and beyond. What's interesting is the millennial generation has been our first fully online group, and with this blessing and access to knowledge have come a few side effects. We're living at a speed of life unlike any other time before, and we're dealing with situations we've never experienced. And just like the acculturation I spoke of a couple moments ago, we're changing everything. We're challenging tradition. The way that we create relationships, maintain relationships has been totally changed. The way that we formulate our own identities and the way that we assign meaning has absolutely changed. And there's a number of reasons for that. But again, most importantly, where I see the most impact is the way that we parent. Every generation wants to empower their children to have the best tools and skills so that they can be their best as they grow on and they launch out into society. And what I have personally seen is, working with both the family systems and working with children, that they have been so over-scheduled from the time that they're itty-bitty on, that by the time that they're supposed to launch out into society, they are either burnt out, incapable, or unwilling to continue to work at the paces and the amount of pressure that they have been. And so for the overachieved, that's one issue. But also for the neglected. I work with a number of, again, children and family systems where the parents couldn't be as present as they wanted to be, perhaps. Maybe needing to work multiple jobs to make ends meet. Or they just didn't have the skills they needed to be parents. And so they allowed their children to be nannied by televisions and video games. And what's unique is for both the overachieved and the neglected, there's a distinct lack of ability to endure distress. And while overall the millennial generation has been hailed for their community mindset and their collaborative approaches to the workplace, which are awesome, the individual lack of ability to handle conflict is greatly concerning. The youth that I work with most today struggle with things like depression and anxiety, PTSD, and OCD. However, not in the sense of traditional obsessive-compulsive disorder, which absolutely is something, more in the sense of obsessive comparison disorder. And this is where my sense of self and self-worth comes from: the number of friends and friend requests I have, maybe on Facebook, how many likes and retweets I have, and the way that I compare myself and my full life to the images I see of others' external life clips on Facebook. It's a generation's old issue of keeping up with the Joneses, put on steroids and flashing 24/7, 365, day and night on your laptop, your tablet, your phone. Contributing to issues of fear of missing out, FOMO, because YOLO, you only live once. And the sad thing is that even created by external situations, not organically based, the more that we go into these states of depression and anxiety and when we get stressed out, we're creating a situation where we're changing the biochemical formations in our brain. And we are not just stressed, but we're actually becoming disordered. So how did we arrive at this point where I can go down any street, any town in the United States, I can count down 3 homes, and statistically the people who live there would be dealing with some form of chemical health issue: abuse, misuse, addiction. Counting down every 4th or 5th home, the people there statistically would be dealing with some form of mild to moderate mental health. I think to really understand this, we need to rewind a little bit. We need to look at our evolution. Going back only to the 80s, think about it. What was going on then? The big corporations came to rise. We were climbing the ladders at speeds we had never seen before. And whether you were doing blow to keep up with the company's demand of your energy and time, or you got some prescription helpers to help you through, we were living it up in the decade of decadence, the me decade. We wanted, dual income households, bigger paychecks, bigger cars, bigger hair, faster cars, louder music. And we began talking about the issues of second shift syndrome, where we gave work our all, and the breadcrumbs that were left over, physically, emotionally, mentally, were given to the rest of our lives, including our family. We spoke about this as we were becoming a fast food nation, and we drove through that and we got to the 90s. And we were still going more and doing more and being more, but we wanted to feel more calm about it. So we decided to embrace things like Paxil and the wonders of Viagra, and we became a Prozac nation. And as we brunched our way through the 90s, the internet went mainstream. And we arrived past the scare of Y2K to that online connectedness that is still present today. So what does this all mean? The general overview. It's about the individual markers that have happened in time. Going back, all the way back to the baby boomers, they had newspaper headlines of Cold War scares and drills with their hands over their heads under their desks. But the threat wasn't as present as some of the things that we saw today. For my generation, the Gen Xers, we had the Iraq War televised. But that illusion of security and safety was still so strongly in place because those things happened somewhere else. They don't happen here. That was about the people over there. That's not really about us. Fast forward a little bit, we had Columbine. And it was a collective hope that horrible incident would be a singular event. And then you go forward to the millennial generation. And truly not just the millennial generation, but every single one of us. As a nation and globally, we watched 9/11. And we realized, for us as Americans, it's not just over there. It stripped away that sense of security. It's anybody, any place, anytime, anywhere. And since Columbine, we have had 392 school shootings since. And this does not just happen in the hallways of our high schools. This happens in our colleges, our universities, and even in our elementary schools. Stripping away the belief that there is any safe institution left, this has absolutely contributed to fear and concern and issues with mental and emotional health in our youth for what they see online television up close in real life. And if you can imagine what it's done to parents who have the fear of even putting your child on a school bus these days. We wonder why helicopter parents happen, we make fun of them, but when you're trying to have any sense of safety and control, it reinforces these issues. We're scared, we're alone. Being online and fully connected, our world has never been so small and so accessible. And the sad thing is that those bullies, those tyrants that were at work in school, adult and otherwise, are still out there. But rather than facing them in just one location, such as work or at school, they're online 24/7 and they've multiplied, and they now even come into our homes unwillingly. We know for a fact that the severity and the duration of bullying, especially for our youth, has increased exponentially. And think about it, how much easier is it to tear somebody down when we're only virtually connected? And having one comment, even in black and white, serving as a permanent reminder of an unkind word. We have seen and we have all heard the stories of what this means and what this does and the devastation that can occur. And bringing the viewpoint not just to our youth, but widening out to all of us. Simply turning on our televisions these days, looking at the news feeds, whether it be MSN or CNN, it can be very concerning. And we're in the state of alertness that can absolutely, in and of itself, being in that constantly fight or flight state, bring about situations of depression and anxiety. So how do we do this? What happens? Back in the 80s, reminding you a little bit, we did polls of a nation looking at issues of loneliness. Back then, 20% of our nation responded that yes, they were struggling with that. These polls were recently redone. And take a guess what the numbers were. 40% or more, based on the generation that you were looking at. And when you take loneliness, fear, and isolation, and you put that with our online connectedness and the disconnect that so many of us feel, you are creating a breeding ground for mental health and breakdown, but also for the potential to break through for a generation that no longer wishes to live and feel this way. There are so many things that we need to do individually and on a society level to, in part, embrace just the new situation that is our new normal, that this is where our world is at. And while definitely not a cure-all, I have 5 steps that I'd like to look at so that we can start beginning to make changes as individuals, because we know that's how we change society, to how we can start looking at this. The first one is, don't be afraid to fail. We need to totally reframe this. Think about Thomas Edison, who said he never failed at creating the light bulb, he just found 10,000 ways how not to do it. Okay? It's all in the attitude and the way that we reframe things and how we look at what we're doing. One of the things I love most about this generation is your entrepreneurial spirit. And if you're going to create the next must-have techie gadget or the next mega corporation, there's going to be tons of revisions that have to happen. This is not failure. Getting out and having to redo something means that you're participating. It means that you are in the game. And what bigger success can there be? We must have empathy for each other. We must applaud not just the final product, but the process that is involved in order to get there. Failure does not denote less than or not as worthy. It gives you great character and some pretty awesome stories. Secondly, we need to disconnect and reconnect. The online universe, there's a lot of great benefits to it. There's also a lot of issues that come along with it too. Being able to detox a little bit, to actually be able to connect in person, and fully be present with those that you're getting out and making memories with. Take pictures, great, but don't step away from that to post, to blog, to put it online. Be present and show up. And if you're struggling, reach out, connect in person. You may not have 200 BFFs that are available at a drop of a hat, but if you have 1 or 2 people that you can count on, you're doing really good. And most importantly, taking a look at the way that you're sleeping. If you're not willing to take a challenge of detoxing from the digital world for a week or 2, which many people have done and reported that they feel less stressed, that they feel more present, that they rest better, even powering down your phone, your tablet, your laptop, whatever it is, even the TV, 1 hour before bedtime, has demonstrated that you will be getting a deeper level of sleep, a more restful sleep, more sleep in general, and we know for a fact that sleep is the starting place to good health. And if you're not getting it, it absolutely contributes to issues with mental, emotional, and physical issues. A picture may be worth 1,000 words, but it's never the full story. Not everybody's family looks like a Gap ad. Not everybody's house looks like it's always ready to be in a good housekeeping photo shoot. Not everybody is ahead of you, getting promoted, getting married, getting engaged, having children, whatever it may be. We are extending the time frames as a society collectively of what is normal to do these things and taking those steps into the markers that make us adults. Very easy advice to give, but very hard to follow. Don't worry about other people's journeys. That's about them. Work on yours. Be present in yours. And make it as phenomenal as you possibly can. But what we have is a lot of uncertainty. Yeah, it's scary out there. But there's economic times that are uncertain, but uncertainty can open doors to opportunities that you never thought possible. If you're out there right now having a quarter-life crisis because you don't have everything figured out, breathe. Take a moment and relax. And realize the really cool thing that's happening with our fast-changing society is unlike generations past. The millennial generation and those moving forward can have as many as 6 or 7 different careers over the course of their lifetime. How cool is that? You don't have to have it figured out in your 20s or even your 30s. And sometimes taking that step and trying something and finding out you really don't like it is the thing that propels you to where you're supposed to be even faster. helps you find your meaning even quicker than sticking to the safe zones. It's okay. And lastly, most importantly, not all who wonder are lost. One of my favorite quotes from the ever-wise Walt Whitman, where he said, "Oh me, oh life, so sad these questions recurring." What is the answer? That you are here, that identity and life exist, and the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. The collective identity of the millennial generation has had a variety of responses. Lazy for living with your parents when you're 27 and so on. The change makers, ill-equipped, more mentally ill. Entrepreneurial spirit is not all bad. I want to leave you with this. Yes, we know that increased issues with mental health are on the rise, but millennial generations, I speak now only to you. It's okay. Breathe and take a moment. Realize all the greatness. Yes, times are uncertain. That doesn't mean that we have to fear today. It means that we embrace today and enjoy it today. Think about back when the baby boomers were back in their hippie days. They had many articles written about them stating that they would be the downfall of the free world. And they turned out okay. When you're feeling lost and overwhelmed, keep in mind the words of Robin Williams, who said that we only get one small spark of madness and you mustn't lose it. Live the life you were meant to live, even if others question it, it's not theirs. And regret is not going to help the depression and anxiety that you're feeling. You only get one life. Make it amazing. And I know that you have the capability to do that. And when you are feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling perhaps lost, think back to the words of Walt Whitman to find your answer. That life and identity exist, and that you are here, and the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. Make it a powerful one. Thank you.